So the G7 meetings have wrapped up. Did our Prime Minister accomplish what he was seeking?
I think that Prime Minister Trudeau performed very well. It's a very tough situation. It's hard for people to feel empathy unless they can find a personal connection. I don't think that there's a Canadian or anybody in the Western world who doesn't know what a shopping center is. So in the middle of this G7 summit, Vladimir Putin conspired to do the same thing when the Secretary General of the United Nations was visiting Kyiv a couple of months ago, when he sent in missiles within a couple of blocks of him. He carried out this senseless, barbaric, absolutely unprovoked attack on a shopping center. They're actually trying to come up with a cover story now saying, oh, there might have been arms nearby, and they were sure that the shopping center was closed. But people can now see what the madness of Trump, what Putin is producing right now in the world. We're looking at a situation where he is provoking terrorist attacks on human beings in a neighboring country, and the average Canadian, the average member of the G7, everybody in the Western world now understands that. Prime Minister Trudeau went to the Commonwealth Summit just before. It was important to connect with African countries because many of them have close ties to Russia and they're very hesitant. They're not sure which side to come down on. He'll be heading to Madrid, as we just mentioned in the newscast, for the NATO summit. There he will be able to push hard for more involvement. Canada will be getting more involved in Latvia, for example, putting more troops there. So I think that overall, Marcia, what we're seeing now is the Western world ramping up, and at the same time, because of the food crisis and the threat to 750,000 people who could die this year from starvation, we realize that it's not just about talking about the war between Russia and Ukraine, it's about finding a solution to that situation, because the rest of the world, of course, depends on finding that solution.
Canada, as we heard from the Prime Minister earlier this morning, pledging more loans and aid to Ukraine. Tom, in your view, could we be doing more? Is this the maximum that we could be doing? What's your take on the announcement earlier from
I think
the
that
PM?
in large measure due to the active involvement of our Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, who of course has roots in Ukraine with her family, she's pushed very hard. And I think that the numbers that Canada has put up is something that every Canadian can be proud of. We're doing as much as we can, given the size of our economy and our overall population. But we have to realize that at some point, there will have to be an adult conversation about Crimea that Russia invaded years ago and is saying it's holding on to, about Donbass. You know, sometimes in order to save the patient, you have to cut off a hand to save the arm. And I think that at some point, that discussion is going to have to take place. Right now, of course, Ukraine predictably is saying they're going to fight for every square inch. The Russians are pushing back with massive forces. The world is losing. And the control of this situation could easily slip out of everyone's hand from one day to the next. When you talk about 750,000 people potentially dying because the Russians are holding back Ukrainian grain from the world markets and people will simply not have food, it's time to realize that we've got to put our best foot forward, find the best people. Who are the world leaders today who can actually take part in those discussions to try to get us away from this gridlock? I was listening to the Ukrainian president yesterday, Zelensky, saying he would love to have this thing wrapped before the winter. But how's that going to happen?
Yeah.
And then what?
And then what? Last question for you, Tom, and I know I'm going a bit over time with this, but it can't be a coincidence that the mall was attacked. Do you think that Putin will call for more attacks as the NATO summit gets underway? And really, what's the mindset then of, as you say, targeting a place that everybody can feel a connection with, a shopping center where teenagers hang out?
Well, I think that that's the thing. I'm not sure that we can talk about Putin's mindset without questioning his state of mind. Is he playing with a full deck? Is he well? And it's, of course, obvious that the Russians are not going to do anything to replace him or to displace him in the middle of a war like this. But it's also clear to me that he's not going to be there for very long, no matter what happens in this war, because it just can't continue on this way. The Russians have gotten themselves into something that they don't know how to get out of. And I think that that's why we need the best people who are available in the world to start working together to try to find an exit ramp that can be acceptable to both Ukraine, which has suffered so much and don't want to give up anything, and Russia, which has provoked this absolutely horrific attack, has committed war crimes, has committed genocide, as Canada has correctly said. And yet, even there, we've still got to try to think of the longer-term repercussions if we don't find a solution. I think that that's where we are right now, Marcia.
Tom Mulcair. Tom is CTV's political commentator, and he is the former leader of the NDP.